That was good.
Thanks,
Some
man.
good stuff. So I want to go into a few things. Obviously, I look at what's happened to us in our life. Our trauma forms kind of patterns in our life, some good, some bad, I see. I'll give you one example. I remember growing up as a kid, I had a speech impediment. We've talked about this. And I couldn't speak effectively. And I'm doing my S's. It was a lisp. People would bully me and make fun of me, and I felt like I didn't fit in. So I started practicing in front of the mirror. Eventually, I overcame my speech impediment, and then I was speaking more, and that became one of my strengths. But what I was doing is I was always trying to fit in and prove something to somebody. And later on in my life, where was that going? Into success, making money. But it was a constant thing. But I was also trying to prove the love to my father and get worthiness from him. So that was one thing that drove me to become successful in my own way. But there were some things about that actually were not good. Eventually, once I broke through that, I had more breakthroughs in life. So that's just an example. I would love to hear from you, specifically in your life, trauma or certain things that happened to you, and how that kind of formed who you are as a person today, and how you work through some of the bad things that came from that.
So my life is actually a series of traumas. So all the way from the 7th month in utero, when my biological mother, she knew she was not going to be able to keep me, but she took really good care of me. She enjoyed being pregnant. I had 3 other half siblings, all back to back to back. But at the 7th month, because I asked her, I said, when did you know you were not going to keep me? She said, at 7 months. And then I said, what'd you do? She said, I just tried to act like you weren't there anymore. So my core trauma started there, but even that's my core life trauma. But my biological mother, her father, who's my grandfather, killed her mother when she was 9 years old. My biological father, his father, fell 7 stories off of a building when he was 15 years old. So then we're into generational trauma. Research tells us that trauma can be passed through the DNA up to 9 generations, and that's just what we see. So my trauma started there, then being in foster care, then being adopted. So my core issues were always fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. Those things drove me. That fear drove me to my success. But it also created a lot of dysfunction. And so over the years, I was 27 years old. I was already traveling around the country. I'd already written a parenting book before I realized that I was scared. And that happened through my work with a client. She said, what are you afraid of? And I was like, I'm not afraid of anything. I was unbuttoning and about to show my Superman. And then I realized I'd been afraid my entire life. And then I grew up in a very violent home. I mean, it was violence as long as I can remember. And so then what that did is it reinforced the not good enough and the fear of rejection. And more than that, it made me very stress sensitive. So I'm very sensitive to stress. My body perceives stress in a heightened way. And then the benefit of that, though, is it makes me really good at what I do because I'm really perceptive. And so every trauma that you've ever had, it's the duality of trauma. Every painful thing you've ever gone through, you don't even have to call it a trauma. Every painful thing you've ever gone through plants a seed for something even greater to happen. You just have to not be ashamed of it or afraid of it or looking at it or processing it or feeling it. You just got to keep looking yourself in the mirror and looking at the hard stuff and being ready to grow, being willing to grow.
It's really good. So you have become literally one of the most famous people in your industry. Can you talk about very specific things you did to build a personal brand and then the opportunities that have come from it now over the years in different businesses?
So my first informational product was a VHS tape. Some of you don't even know what that is. That's how long I've been doing this shit, a long time. I hired a guy and I did an interview and he recorded it and it was called Up Close and Personal with Bryan Post.
Nice.
I was lecturing around the country and I got on the lecture circuit Started lecturing for University of Arizona. I was lecturing 6 hours a day, 3 days in a row, every week. And I did that for the most part for 7 years. Because by year 3, I knew that if I kept lecturing before I was done, one person in every state in the country would know who I was. Because I'd usually have 50 to 100 people in my audience. And so I just had to dig in, and that's not easy. When you travel, when you've never traveled and you travel for the first 3 years, it's glamorous. After that, it becomes dog shit. It's a struggle, it's a grind. So I sold that little VHS tape at every one of my talks, and then I wrote a parenting book. My very first parenting book, I sat down every morning for 1 hour, and I wrote, and I did that until that book was complete. Now, that was, 25 years ago. 2 weeks ago, I wrote a book in 24 hours. You just get better at doing the things that you've always done. And so I did that. I spoke, I wrote books. I had a message. I was passionate about my message. I didn't mind going against the established names in the industry. If I thought what they were talking about was shit, especially when it came to kids, I let them know it. I let them hear it. And I did that on very big stages. And I went through a lot of years of people not liking me, people making fun of me. And, 20 years later, 25 years later, half the people that I was going up against are dead now. And so sometimes it's just persistence.
Just keep going, baby.
You just outlive them. But you have to be persistent. I mean, I'm no different than every other superhero in this room. I freaking struggled. It's been just a journey of up and down, up and down, up and down. I mean, there was a time as an adult, I had to move back home, and my father had passed away, so it was just my mom. I didn't have any money. She loaned me her last money because she said, I believe in you, and that there's nothing more powerful than that. And I knew I had this little bedroom in her house. I knew I needed a desk more than I needed a bed. So I moved the bed out. I bought a little cushion that I could sleep on at night. It was easy to roll up and tuck away during the day so I could sit at that desk and I could go to work. And then that's after 15 years of traveling around the world and working with families. I still have struggles. But I did that, and I dug in, and I didn't stop. And the last time that I was about 5 years ago when I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but ever since I was 20 years old, so I've had so many failures because I risk it all. I don't play small. I go big every single time. The last time I lost everything. Went back to mom's, and then I started doing Facebook Lives. I did a freaking Facebook Live every day for 2 years. Every day for 2 years. So people talk about they don't have time for this, or they can't do this, or they're afraid. That's all bullshit. That's bullshit from blueprints that you grew up with. You have to face that pain down. You have to face it down. And you're the only one who can do it. And the reason I like to put people together is because we are relationship beings. We are biologically engineered to be in relationship. Every cell, every dendrite, every synapse is engineered for relationship. So you can cry all by yourself, but you're not going to get to the good stuff, the real processing, the real feeling of being heard and supported until you're in a relationship with someone. And that could just be having a friend like Brandon or having a coworker. Could be your spouse. It could be a best friend. Could be a support group. But you get with someone and you talk about the things you struggle with.
I got two questions to part of that. The first one, we're going to go in the video stuff, but since you have literally become a millionaire and lost it, how many times now? Like 5 times?
4 probably. 4
okay.
Or 5, yeah.
And now you're back on the top. When you lost everything, because Sam and I shared how we lost everything, now we're back on the top. We're working our way towards where we're going. And I'll tell you this, when you're at that low moment, there's a couple very specific things you got to do. I mean, obviously keep going, but for you, what were the very specific things you did while you were in your mother's room, no mattress with a desk, strategies that you implemented to get yourself back up to where you were?
One of the most overrated things is thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking. Spend time to think, whether it's when you're working out, which is another one. Get up, start moving your body, getting some fresh air. I give myself a day. I give myself a day to feel sorry for myself, to sleep an extra hour, mope around the house, and then the next day I'm busting my ass and I'm getting back to business because I've got goals. So you have to have goals. Your goals are what direct you and drive you and motivate you. And so when I tell people, write your goals down every freaking day, most people are like, oh, I've got goals and they're in your head. That's not enough. You got to write them down. You got to write them down every day, write the same goals every day because you're conditioning your reticular activating system. You're conditioning a part of your brain that will literally attract your goals to you. But you've got to be willing to write them down, see them, believe them, smell them. Just 3 months ago, I got frustrated. I was supposed to have been selling one of my businesses, and it was going to be $1 million sale, and it fell through at the last moment. So I'm a little frustrated. But I was at a conference. I didn't want to allow myself to be, I don't like negativity, so I didn't want to dwell in that negativity very long. I gave myself about 30 minutes, and then I'm like, you know what, this doesn't feel good. I left the conference, and I went to the Lamborghini dealership. I went to the Lamborghini dealership because that's my dream car, an SVJ. And I smelled tires, and I sat in the car, met a cool little kid. He showed me around all the cars. We just had a good time. I called the Uber driver to drive me back, and on the way back, I formulated a book for Uber drivers. So I literally went back to my room and wrote the freaking book. And it's now on Amazon. It's called The Underground Handbook for How to Get Big Uber Tips.
Let's give a round of applause for that. Come on. Go get that book.
So, and then I'm gonna give it to Uber drivers because I want to see them prosper and not feel victimized by the company that they're driving for. But the specific things, you write the goals, you think, write goals, and execute. Pick up your freaking phone. It doesn't need to be professional. Pick your phone up, start recording, and then write, and just let people know what you're doing. And this whole social media thing is the most amazing thing ever. I can now sit I can sit anywhere in the world that I'm at, and I can have an audience. I used to have to get on a freaking plane. I used to have to drive an hour and a half, sit in an airport, sit in a stinky plane in the back next to the bathroom, fly across the country, sleep in a shitty hotel, and get up to speak to 35, 40, 50 people. Sometimes I do that. I've spent $10,000 marketing an event, and I had 3 people show up. Now, I spoke to those 3 people just like they were 300, but you don't have to do that anymore. That's amazing. All you got to do is turn your phone on. How cool is that? And then you have actual events like Rise and Record with experts in this stuff who are giving you the blueprints, the GPS, the roadmap, the ways for how to do it.
You did Facebook Lives every day for how many days?
2 years.
2 years. So, and there are no excuses. Like everybody, I had somebody on a radio show the other day, they said the reason why they couldn't do something. I thought, dude, like I have a business schedule. You just do it. And so for you, when doing that, what were very specific things that came from that, opportunities for you, conversations, people that reached out? What did they say to you? What did it lead to? What were the opportunities that came from doing daily video content?
I had to make money. So I had to sell books. I had to reach people. And then all of a sudden, I've got people who wanted lectures, so I would go and lecture. And then from that point, from one of those lectures, God gave me a vision for a business that I started 3.5 years ago, which is now on track to do $20 million. I actually cashed out 80% of it earlier this year, and my 20% will eventually be worth what I sold my 80% for. And so if it had not been for taking action, I wouldn't have got to that point. So, very big things, which then frees me up financially to hear a YouTube video, call a phone number, have him give me a call, and I gave him shit because I was like, hey, the website you guys got me going to wasn't working. What's the deal? You gotta get money, man. And so he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna get that fixed. And I said, where can I meet you at? Where can I see you guys at? What are you offering? What are you selling? Because I don't need details. How do I pay? Because I knew what I'd heard and what he was teaching was what I wanted to be exposed to. And so by having the financial means, it helps me take action faster, which then grows my network, grows my relationships. I'm able to generate a new business. When I met Brandon 2 years ago, I had this idea. Now we're about to launch a whole social media platform. It's just like, being able to do great things.
I'll never forget, one more question we wrap up here. He calls me, so I call you, whatever it was. It was for a 2-day event, which you paid over 10 grand for. And it was, I remember we were talking, you said what you did. I remember talking about my niece and nephew, Jackson and Jordan. And we connected right away, and I was asking you advice, and we were just talking more relationship-wise as people. And then, oh yeah, we're doing this, I think it'd be a great opportunity. You came to that mastermind, I think Jefferson, were you there?
Yeah.
Jefferson was there. And then you joined the Rise and Record Mastermind, and now we've become really good friends. I would love to just hear from you, because before you went into the Rise and Record Mastermind, you were doing videos already. You had a brand. What were the different things you learned throughout the meetups, the filming, or just anything from me or anybody in the group that you took away from it that's helped you?
For me, it's always a series of things. I can't say that there was any specific one thing, because I am a consumer of knowledge and education and information. It is the being in the environment. Being in the environment sows energy into me. It sows positive energy, positive vibration. We're only negative or positive. So when I'm in the environment, when I'm around this guy and his eyes are bucked out, and he's standing in a corner, and the guy is energized. You know, it energizes me. And so it's just a series of things that you hear, just small ideas, small things, and I can't say specifically what the one thing is, but it's the big thing for me, and that's the energy.
I love it. Let's give all a round of applause for Bryan Post. Love you, man. Come on, let's give him a round of applause.